Clear, Mayday, Pakistan 8303.
Pakistan 8303, roger sir, both runways available to land.
Mayday, Pakistan 8303, are both naves available to lot when the pilot uttered these words. This passenger aircraft was at a height of only 600 feet above Karachi. Due to the scorching heat in Karachi, the largest city of Pakistan, everyone was in there. The houses were closed. It was 2:35 in the afternoon and no one knew that after a few moments an emergency situation was going to arise in Karachi because the pilot of Pakistan International Airlines PK 8303 had given the distress signal of Mayday. It was said that the pilot has become helpless and the plane has now gone out of his control. After a few seconds of giving this signal, Karachi is shaken by a loud bang and the sky is covered with a sheet of black smoke. Airbus A320 model flies over the densely populated area of the colony. Crashes just 430 minutes before the airport. The surprising thing is that in the investigation report it was said that there was no fault of any kind in the plane. Then how did this accident happen? What was the conversation going on between the pilot and the traffic controller just a few minutes ago? Why and how the first attempt to land at this airport failed and what secrets came out in the investigation that lasted for 3 years. Flight 8303 it was to take off from Lahore at 1 p.m. and its destination was Karachi International Airport. It was a short flight which had to land at its destination in approximately 1 hour 45 minutes. At that time, the COVID lockdown was at its peak, due to which very few flights were running. But on the other hand, the month of Ramadan was going on and Eid holidays were about to come. There were less flights and more passengers, that is, the flight was completely packed. A total of 91 passengers and 8 crew members were present in it. Today the weather was absolutely perfect in Lahore. Also, if we talk about pilots in Karachi, the flight captain was 58 years old Sajjad Gul, who had joined Pakistan International Airlines for 24 years and had 18,000 hours of experience, while the first officer was 33 years old Usman Azam, who had a PI. 10 years had passed. This was a 16-year-old Airbus A320 aircraft, which had 2 CFM56 turbofan engines, and these 2 engines have a very important role in this story. The aircraft was in perfect condition and was maintained as per the recommendations of Airbus. After completing all the preparations at Lahore Airport, the plane took off at 1:05 p.m. with a delay of only 5 minutes. After some time, Flight 8303 had reached an altitude of 34,000 feet, which is called cruising altitude, and in the next, it had to remain at this altitude for 45 minutes. As soon as it reached the cruising altitude, the cabin crew offered snacks to both the pilots, but since they were fasting, they refused. During cruising, the pilots kept the plane on autopilot and moved around. Started talking. At 1:02 minutes the ship was crossing Nawab Shah and at this time it was connected with Karachi Control Tower, i.e. the work of the previous control tower was finished. Now the further responsibility was of Karachi Tower. Karachi Control informed the pilot, welcomed them and asked them to reach Mauchly directly. Normally, the ships flying on this route reach Nawab Shah and confirm from Karachi Tower as to which route they have to take. There are many routes from Nawab Shah to Karachi, which include Nawab Shah 2A Nawab. Route 2B and Nawab Shah 1C 2A pass near Hyderabad and take a right turn after reaching Kinjar Lake and then go straight to Karachi Airport. Route 2B comes directly from Nawab Shah towards Karachi and then takes 28 from the airport. km or 15 nautical miles, first, from the Mauchly point, take a left, come straight to the airport and go right again, and the third route is 1C, which goes straight from Nawab Shah to Mauchly point. These 3 routes are also recorded in the flight computer. That is, whatever route is assigned at the instigation of Nawab, the pilots save it in their flight computer and then the autopilot itself increases or decreases its altitude and speed. Now the thing to note here is that PI Flight 8303 was first assigned to Nawab Shah 2 route was assigned, which is a bigger route in appearance, but later when the pilot insisted, he was allowed to reach Mauchly directly because it was the pandemonium period and there was no rush of flights, hence the controller also asked him to go there. Permission was given to reach Mauchly directly, but the pilot's mistake was that he did not save this shortcut in the flight management computer. That is, the computer was thinking that Nawab Shah 2A route was selected, whereas in reality he was coming from VC Nawab Shah. The height of the ship was 34,000 feet and at Mauchly waypoint i.e. 28 kilometers before Karachi airport, the ship should have reached 7,000 feet. Now obviously the ship cannot come from 34,000 to 7,000 immediately, so it should be taken between Nawab Shah and Mauchly. You have to gradually reduce your altitude on the way. If the route is long, the altitude will decrease gradually, and if the route is short, the altitude will decrease rapidly. Due to the route 2A being selected in the flight computer, the altitude will be 1,000 feet per minute. While the pilot was taking the ship through 1C, the altitude should have been reduced more rapidly, due to which it happened that at the point of Mauchly, where the ship was supposed to be at 7,000 feet, it was actually at 10,000 feet. But when the Karachi controller found the altitude of PK 8303 on the radar to be high, the pilot was asked that your altitude is high, will you be able to land easily or will you reduce the altitude by doing a round trip on Mauchly itself, on which the captain said no. We will do it and refused to take the roundabout. Till now, both the pilots were not aware that the route saved in the computer was different and they were coming from another route. This information was obvious to them, but they did not pay attention to it. Later, the nose of the ship was lowered to reduce the height. Now it was coming down rapidly at a speed of about 2,400 feet per minute, that is, 2,400 feet were being reduced in 1 minute, and due to the nose being down, the speed of the ship also increased. After a few seconds, the plane had reached 21 kilometers away from the runway. Its altitude, which was earlier 10,000 feet, now remained at 6,000, but according to the rules at this point, the altitude has to be kept at 3,000 feet, that is, these people were at double altitude during this time. The controller tried to contact the captain several times, but according to the flight data recorder, the pilot accidentally changed the radio frequency. When the captain was unable to be contacted, the captain was contacted through the emergency frequency and told to it was said that you are at 6,000 feet, whereas here you should be at 3,000 feet. They were asked to orbit again, due to which both the speed and altitude of the plane could be reduced, but this time also the captain refused, saying that we are on the runway. It has been established that we will do it. On this occasion, the captain told the first officer that after landing, these people will be surprised. This voice was also recorded in the cockpit voice recorder, and the Karachi controller also heard it. The controller again ordered them to orbit, on which the captain refused for the third time. At this point the captain realized his mistake, that actually the route 2A was selected in the flight computer, whereas he had come from 1C. On this he was also heard saying, "Oh. What happened? Stop, stop, end the hold," on which the first officer ended his hold and gave the entire hold to the captain. Remember that till now the first officer was flying the ship, whereas the captain's responsibility was to keep an eye on everything, and the captain had to. It was not the case that the first officer did not open the landing gear. PK 8303 was descending very rapidly, and at one point its speed exceeded 650 km per hour. At which point warning alarms began to sound as it approached the ground. When he arrived, because his landing gear had not opened, a second alarm also started ringing. At this point, the first officer got scared and asked the pilot, "Sir, should we really take an orbit in which both speed and altitude can be controlled?" But captain, he was adamant on his insistence. By the time he reached near the runway, multiple alarms were sounding in the plane, including one for the landing gear. In this confusion, the plane was landed on the runway without opening the landing gear. The plane went off the runway 4 times in 16 seconds. Due to which, there was a lot of shaking in the cabin, and both the engines of the plane rubbed on the runway and oil started leaking from them. The captain, who was already confused due to the alarms, at this point realized what had happened to him. A mistake has been made, but then the first officer shouted and said, "Sir, take off, sir, take off." In panic, the captain obeyed the first officer and lowered the lever and lifted the plane up again. Experts believe that on this occasion, the plane landed on the runway itself. Should have been left at bay, at most the engine would have caught fire, but at least they would have been close to the airport emergency service. There was a chance that that fire could have been controlled, but the captain did not do so. On takeoff again, realized that one engine had failed due to rubbing, and now the plane was flying on only one engine, and its condition was also not good because oil had leaked from both the engines. Now it reached an altitude of 3,000 feet. After going around, they were moving towards the runway again, on which the control tower told them that all the runways are empty, you can land on any. Meanwhile, vibration started in the last engine, and after some time it also stopped. Now the plane was moving in circles towards the runway without engine, and its altitude was decreasing rapidly. This time the captain had opened the landing gear much earlier, due to which drag was being generated, and the speed was decreasing. Speed, which he needed the most at this time, had come in line with the runway at a height of 600 feet, but the captain had realized that he would not be able to reach the runway, and then he gave a call of Mayday, Mayday Mayday Pakistan 8303. Then just a few seconds later, at 2.5 minutes, just 1340 meters before the runway, PI flight PK 8303 fell on the houses of Model Colony. The explosion produced by this crash was heard miles away, and black smoke rose into the sky. Of the 99 passengers on board, including the crew, 2 miraculously survived, while 1 life was lost on the ground due to crashing into houses. Emergency services arrived immediately, but they found it difficult to operate due to the narrow streets. Had to face, according to the investigation report, the responsibility of this accident goes to the captain, who repeatedly violated the rules and regulations, and many times refused to follow the instructions of the traffic controller. The second responsibility was of the air traffic controller. Why did he not tell the pilot? It was told that their landing gear was not open. If the gear had been open in the first attempt itself, then perhaps this situation would not have happened. The third reason given was that both the pilots were fasting that day, that is, they had not eaten or drank anything for the last 7 hours. In the same investigation report, it was also revealed that 40 pilots of Pakistan International Airlines do not have a license. Due to this, we are very thankful for the loving comments. In the next wonderful video,